This has been a very interesting venue to present because a lot of the things that we have been going through at work, I had a chance to see and hear from many different people. So I'm very happy to share my experiences and the things that we have gone through throughout the whole process with my team. My slides do not contain any lines of code, but I have a monkey for you in the spacesuit. Today we're going to talk about user research, and as big as it sounds, it's actually very simple. User research is simply asking deliberate questions about a problem that you care about, then working with your users methodologically to get to their needs and to the answers, and then discussing it with your team to come up with possible design solutions. You can do that in really 3 simple steps. The first one is finding a problem and finding the questions. The second one is working with your users to get the answers to those questions, and then analyzing and discussing with the team. I have been working with digital products for the past 15 years. I did my first website in 2002. I had a chance to work with companies that were larger than 100,000 people. I had a chance to work with companies that were smaller than 100 people. I had a chance to work with big projects with huge budgets, small projects, multiple cultures. And whenever we started a new project, and when we said, let's start with research, this is the reaction that we got. No one really liked to start with user research, and they had a lot of reasons why they wouldn't want to. The first and the most common reaction was, well, we actually know what their users wanted because we asked. Well, user research is not only about asking people. It is only a small portion of that. The fundamental piece of user research is being a part of the user's flow and observing their behavior to understand why they do something and how they do something. Again, asking is a part of it, but it is not the whole question. The second thing that I hear a lot was, well, we actually don't need to talk to the users about it because we decided on that. And they say, well, we had a meeting and we decided what we know about the user. That is not the case because your users were never a part of those meetings. Meetings are great, small or big, they're a good exchange of ideas, but as long as you're not working with your users, that doesn't count as user research. So having a big meeting is not user research. The other most common thing that you hear is that we don't have time. User research does not really delay things. There are certain methods that will take long, but there are hundreds of different methods that can be tailored to any schedule, any budget, and any question. The other thing that is nice about user research is that if you do it well at the beginning phases of your project, it will save a lot of time in the coming phases because it eliminates unknowns in a very early manner so that you don't go down a troubled route. Some teams come up and say, well, yeah, we get it, but we can't do user research because we're not scientists. There are some methods in the user research space that require highly rigorous technical information. For example, if you're doing a statistical analysis across multiple countries, yes, you do need to know a lot about statistics and math. If you're doing a cognitive study using biosensors, you do need to have PhD level information. But for many other methods, you don't need a master's degree. You don't even need a bachelor's degree to be able to do that. And so this is on one side. And then there's the other side. It's basically saying, well, we are engineers, we can't do user research. Well, it has nothing to do with your background. Good user research has nothing to do with talking to some unknown god. It has nothing to do with being a part of a cult. Your lifestyle doesn't impact that. Your job doesn't impact that. It's basically learning some skills that are really easy to learn, which I'm going to share 3 with you today. And you don't really need any psychic skills. The most common one that you hear would be, well, we don't have the money for it. Obviously, again, there are many methods, and if you choose to start your project with a multi-country ethnographic study that will take 4 years, yes, it is going to cost a lot. But again, you don't have to go there, and I'll show you an example from that. Do you guys know this robot? It's a robot called Big Dog from a company called Boston Robotics. They're a military robot company, and they do a lot of things with these devices so that they help the military folks on the ground. This is a military robot that is designed to carry arms, supplies throughout the terrain. And it is a fantastic device. Let me show you a video of that. So it can climb on its own. Walk on ice without slipping. can run and it can climb things. So this is actually an amazing thing. So they said, okay, this is a good technology, so let's get out some Marines, some soldiers, to try this on the field. So they give this to a set of soldiers and ask them to take this to an exercise mission and then come back to tell them what, how they're using it. 2 days later, the soldiers came back and they shared a surprising comment. They said, we don't want this because it makes a lot of noise. So when you are a unit that is trying to hide in the field, you shouldn't be carrying a diesel engine to tell others where you are. By the time that they did this study with the actual users of the system, they have already spent $32 million on this project. Fantastic engineering achievements, which doesn't really solve any user needs. So it was a really bad choice to do no user research, which came out to be a very expensive thing. So we talked about why it's not expensive, we talked about why it's simple, and we talked about how it actually is beneficial, and that we can do it in really 3 simple steps. And then, why are these guys still upset? Well, it's not because they're ignorant. It's not because they are actually being hard on people. It's because they have gone through research that had really simple flaws that created a really bad outcome. And these are very, very simple things to catch. For example, some teams just say, yeah, I read an article on Medium, I saw talk on TED, we should start with user research. If you do not formulate your question properly at the beginning, if you do not know what you're looking for, then you're not going to have any good insights at the end of your user research round. So this will be number 1, a very bad choice to start without deciding what to pay attention to. Another problem would be using the wrong methods with the wrong users. This is very crucial because we hear a lot of different research methods, and working with the right type of users is very crucial. For example, assume that I'm going to design an aircraft control system. I don't think I'm going to ask anyone in the room because probably the chances are that you're not going to control planes landing in and out in an airport anytime soon. Similarly, you can't just walk into a cafeteria and ask people what they think and call it user research. There are pieces of guerrilla techniques that are extremely hard to get. Unless your target audience is exactly the same people who are sipping their coffees in the cafeteria, you are not going to get good insights from your trip to the cafeteria. So this would be another mistake. And the third one is having only a small team of researchers analyze the results. This may be acceptable for some highly technical methods, but there is no reason for doing this because it basically diminishes the depth and the value of user research as you share it throughout. So to avoid all these 3, today I'm going to share with you 3 simple steps. First, we are going to start by finding the problem by looking at the user data. And then we're going to work with the right users by going out to the field and doing a quick immersion. And then we're going to analyze the problem as one team using a shared analysis technique. So instead of having a giant meeting, you should start your journey by looking at what the users have done. This is a very interesting technique because it is something that you probably already do. If you have an analytics infrastructure, you can look at the top entry paths, top exit paths, the time on pages, the most used funnels, which will give you an idea about where the traffic is coming from and what the paths that are having problems with. You can, even if you don't have something like Google Analytics or Omniture, you can use the static usage data that may be coming from your logs or from your infrastructure. You can look at your top used features. You can look at the collection sizes, for example. If you're running an e-commerce site, you can look at the cart size, the abandoned cart sizes. If you're, say, making a music app, you can look at the sizes of the playlists to get an understanding of how much people use your application or your website. You can look at time of use and frequency of use to get an idea about how people are exposed to your app and when they choose to use it. Device distribution is an excellent thing to share, especially when you're working with the C-level, high-level executives, because those decision makers, they all have iPhone 2X Pro Pluses, so they don't understand the fact that there may be still people around there using their service on a Samsung Galaxy Mini S2. So this is a good wake-up call for the people that are making the choices. So this will be about the usage itself. On top of that, you look at around the usage. So people are coming to your site or to your app to fill out forms. You can look at that content to understand what's going on. You can look at complaints either through your call center or through your complaint websites. You can also check out the user comments in the App Store to see whether people are having problems or having good times with the new features that you have added to the application. This step is all about asking new questions. By the time that you start seeing patterns, you pull them out and start asking deliberate questions against them. For example, let's say that you have observed that bounce rate is spiking on Mondays. Well, the first obvious question is, how long has it been like that? I mean, hey, did we change anything to cause this? We can look at what are the metrics change on Monday. Is it the site time? Is it something else? And then you start looking outside step by step. You can look at what happens in the actual world on Mondays. Maybe there's something that impacts the bounce rates for those days. You can look around the phenomenon. What is happening on Sunday? What will happen on Tuesday? And these will give you an idea about how to ask questions about those things that really make you think. So on day one, this is the step where you go and find out what the data is that you are going to base your questions on. And then on day two, you start to understand the context of what and start making a list of questions that will be used for the next steps. Once you have the questions, the next step would not be to run and talk to random people. It will be doing a field immersion. Field immersion is an extremely lightweight method that eliminates almost all of the biases in terms of user selection and interview criteria. Some of the designers in the audience might have heard about a method called contextual inquiry. It's even lighter weight than that, and it only takes about half a day to carry it out. And I'll share you an example of this. I work with a company called ÇiçekSepeti, which to English literally translates as flower basket. They are, by traffic, the largest website in the world that does flowers and chocolates. I put on so much weight working there, just sampling the products. But the company was known for doing everything end-to-end in-house. So we basically had all the customer channels, so like the website, the app, etc. We also did internally our service dashboards, backend systems, fraud systems, some accounting system. So the company had in its DNA a lot of doing things, end-to-end internally. So it was very important for the product team to understand that end-to-end experience. And to do that, we made flowers. So that's a good flower, and that's me holding another flower. This whole experience does not start with the vase and the flowers. It starts at 5 a.m. in the flower market. This is a wholesale flower market, bulk nursery in Istanbul, where we're standing in the line to pick out the flowers for the day's deliveries. And they're not like nice flowers. They're basically bunches straight cut from the field, untrimmed, nothing that you take and prepare for the day. So that's what we did. We went to one of our locations and we started trimming flowers so that we're ready for the day's offer. And we started like getting our workbench ready, and this is the master florist guy that was overseeing us that day. So we're just waiting, and our first order came, and we had absolutely no idea what to do. I mean, none of us had done flowers before. This guy was supposedly not helping us. He was just looking at us as we were trying to put something together and probably thinking, what the hell are these guys doing? This arrangement probably takes about 7 minutes to make. I know I spent more than 20 minutes, and it wasn't still good. So the flower was composed, but the order wasn't ready because you had to add a gift. If the user wanted one, you had to make sure that their personal note is printed on the right type of paper with no typos and on the correct spacing, and then you have to write the order number on top, take a picture for the remote QA team to make sure that the flower is actually composed right and the order is done. And when we thought that we were done, we had to actually deliver the thing. I live in Istanbul, and these are actually pictures from Istanbul. TomTom says that Istanbul has the sixth worst traffic in the world. So it's worse than Rio, it's worse than Beijing, and we had to deliver that flower that we made to the address in time. This was eye-opening because this was the office that we were working on. Coffee table, coffee machine, billiards table, agile, burn down charts, etc., etc. And this was the reality. By making just one flower, we were able to understand the end-to-end experience of what it means to work for ÇiçekSepeti and what it means to create a good experience for the end users. How much did we spend? just today, although we have wasted a lot of flowers. We do have the same problem in the bank, right? I mean, at Garanti, we have the beautiful building, fantastic, headquarters, offices, high tech. Same with BBVA. We have a, beautiful presence, streamlined places. But when we go out into the field, this is not the reality. There's a lot of rich information that is hidden there that we normally cannot get in our comfortable offices. So going into the field helps us get to those answers in a very lean way. And it is actually very simple to do. The first step would be to forget about your role. You're going there to learn something. You are no longer the director. You're no longer the creator of the system. You're no longer the PM that actually runs the project. You're just there to learn something. You need to have a loose set of questions, which you already did. So you can go back to the work that you did on the first day, pick the most important questions that stick out, maybe group them together to have a loose list of questions that you will use. It really helps a lot if you dress a bit less casual than normal, because then it will be easier to talk. And if you have a pair that you can go with you, that will be very useful. The only thing that you need to do when you go is to ask, shut up, and observe. This is not an interrogation, despite the fact that you may have a list of questions. You're basically there to learn. There are 4 things that you should never, ever say during your user research. The first one is, what do you think of this feature? Because this is an attitude question. This is not a behavior question. They will tell you what they think you would want to hear based on their previous experience with you. If they hate it, they might think that you're not the person to talk to, etc., etc. So this is a terrible question to ask as a beginning of the research. The second terrible one is, how would you design this? They will give you an answer, but it won't be right, because they are not the designer. They probably do not know about the company's strategy. They probably do not have design skills. So they will just tell you about a particular improvement on that particular screen that they're using throughout the day, ignoring all the other alternatives and the flows that you have designed carefully. So this is also another very good question that will get good answers. Another terrible thing to say is that, hey, this is Albert, I built this. While it is, we are all proud of the things that we're building, right? Unfortunately, if we are causing a terrible experience to the people that we're talking to, this is a question that shuts down that barrier of communication. They will try to be kind and probably not tell you the things that they were supposed to tell you. And another one is, after going through all of this stuff, you shouldn't tell or reveal to the users that things have been worse than you think. User research is this shocking experience where you go to the field and working with the real users, you realize that all of your assumptions are just not holding. So this is a terrible thing to feel, but it's temporary. You shouldn't reflect that to your users as they're working. So instead of these things, focus on behavior. Just ask them how they do things and ask them to show how they do their daily work. For example, if you're doing some research work on a hospital intake system, ask them how they register a customer, ask them how they register a new client, and just watch silently. Only after you have gone through multiple flows, then you can ask about their attitude. Then you can ask about what they think of particular features. So focus on behavior above everything, and then follow by attitude. Take notes, and if you're going to take pictures or video, please do that with permission. You need to watch out for your desire to help. Especially if you did the system, it will be really shocking to say, to the right. Don't do that, because then you're going to change the nature of your inquiry. If you see that people are struggling, after everything is over, you can give them a call and say, well, let me tell you why that button is there. And most importantly, don't forget your research question. So this is the stage where we look at what the users are doing and why they're doing it. On day 3, you identify your questions, you get ready for the field, you let them know that they're coming, so it's not like a police raid. And on day 4, visit the site in the morning and spend the afternoon in organizing your notes. Once you have that all done, you had your question, you had your inquiry, now it's time to actually analyze this together. A lot of teams are missing this step, and it is really crucial, even in the companies that actually buy into the value of user research. So a big company, let's assume, starts a new project that says, we're going to build a new fantastic green sports car. It's going to be fast, it's going to be amazing, and then they start the project. Full steam on. Halfway through the project, someone realizes, well, something isn't really going right. And then they say, let's do some user research. So a big meeting convenes. They talk about why this wasn't going right, why we should use things, who should we ask, et cetera, et cetera. And then they come up with a decision. The manager approves it, then the director approves it, then the CEO approves it, and then the prime minister approves it. And then the research team goes out to do their research in this remote location. And the rest of the team stares at the horizon for a long, long, long while. And one day, out of nowhere, someone shows up from the research team and says, you should change the login flow. This is terrible because it's very opaque and arrogant. It is very hard to understand what happened in the user research phase. It is very hard to understand how those insights were gained. It is prepared by a small group, so it was very close to contribution. And the worst of the thing is, if there's an error in that flow, it is discovered at a very late stage, which makes the entire 4-6 month period a waste of time. Instead, an open shared analysis helps you get around these problems by making everyone a part of the analysis activity. It is very easy to understand. It's free of jargon because you're making it by yourself. And it is prepared by an extensive team. And this helps a lot because then you have the same observations going through a much richer set of people, much different set of opinions, which adds depth to that data. Most importantly, if there's an error in the flow, you caught that very early on and you fix that through consensus. I would say this is one of the best and the most fun parts of doing user research because you basically get everyone in the room and then you walk through different types of scenarios with them to make sure that everyone gets to say their opinion. This is a time when you can get a lot of people from different departments to join, including everyone who have actually been in the field with you, doing the interviews, and wanting to input their opinion. You basically fill the room with these people. The questions that you included in the first phase, you put them on one side of the wall. Post-its is a great thing for this, but you can always print them out and cut them and then post them to that area as well. And then you start posting the observations that you did throughout the study. Again, remember, you went out to the field for the half day, and then in the afternoon, these are the notes that you have prepared to take and shared with the people in that room. And once you post these big findings to the wall, you start grouping them through a technique called affinity diagramming. It's basically taking two related items together, putting them, and doing this as a group exercise. Unfortunately, we won't have time to go through a detailed version of this, but I'm going to post a link to Twitter and LinkedIn about a technique called KJ technique. It is a structured affinity diagramming technique, and in 8 steps, you go through multiple rounds of analysis, multiple rounds of grouping and labeling, and at the end, you get a good understanding of how your system is failing in certain areas and how your system is doing well in other areas. Now, after you do this exercise, there will be a moment of pause because you went through probably 200, 300 sets of post-its, everyone gave their opinion, and there will be maybe 8 to 10 things on the wall. I bet that 2 of those things will make you really uneasy. You will see things that you were not expecting at all. You will see things that will make it very hard for you to accept. But this is the time to reflect back on those as a team and see what you can do about this. This is the best part of the whole analysis experience because you're not just looking at what the user has done and pointing fingers at, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that right. By sitting in the team together, looking at only the experience of the users, looking at what you can do, you make a decision about how to move forward, and this becomes the most important and most powerful part of the analysis space. And don't forget, this is all about a particular research question that you are after. Obviously, there will be things that you have seen that you are not expecting, but try to focus around the particular area that you started with and try to make sense of that pain point that you started with. So this was the step where we looked at what we didn't know and collectively decided on what we can do. On day 5, you take your time to work on analysis. If you need to take more data, you can always call your customers, you can always call your participants, and go back to the first set of data that you were looking at to confirm or discard your initial hypotheses. So technically, on day 5, at the end of day 5, you're done with the team. But I suggest adding one more day, where you prepare a presentation that looks at how you came up with the research question, the research that you did, and the insights that you got out of that with the actions that you're going to follow. include the field notes and the research notes that you have, and present this to as many people as possible. I cannot emphasize how important this is, because it shows you that even with a full team working on a particular problem, that there will be things that are missing from the whole product experience. We were working on a bank, and they had some problems in terms of their login flows. So we came up with a protocol, but we weren't able to carry it out extensively because of the budget and timing resources. So we went out to the C-level and said, well, these are the problems that we're seeing. This is the research that we did to confirm these, and these are the actions that we should be taking. And all of them made sense, so we tried to do as a rigorous process as possible. And then the CEO asked, like, how many people did you work out this with? And we said, we only work with 7 people. And he was furious. He was like, we're like the greatest bank of like X, you know, how dare you can do this? Like, do it with like 25 people. And we're like, yes. So it is very good to be open about your process, tell the stakeholders and the people that you're working with about the limitations and the positive side of the research so that they can be a part of it for the next round. Today, we talked very briefly about the simple nature of user research and why it's valuable. It is really simple, based on 3 things. You first look at, it's about asking just deliberate questions about a problem that you care about, and then you work with the actual users in a methodological way to get to those answers, and then you come back together as a team to work on those and come up with design solutions. It doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be taking long, and it doesn't have to be a lonely wolf effort that is done by 1 or 2 designers or researchers. To be able to do that, I recommended 3 methods. By starting with what isn't working, you get an idea about what the problem can be, and you do that by looking at the user data. And then you go out to the field to figure out what is not working and why people are using your product in the particular way. And then you follow up by working together as a team to acknowledge what you didn't know about what the users are doing, and then decide on what you can do together through a shared analysis. Me and my teams work with many companies, many clients, who thought that research was this expensive optional activity at the beginning of a project. We used these 3 simple methods to prove them otherwise. And at the beginning, they were not happy. But throughout, after around like 10 days or so, they were enthusiastic because we got to work on much more interesting problems. We got to hear fascinating stories. And above all, we got to improve on a lot of things that we do together. I hope the techniques that I shared with you today will be useful for you too in creating amazing products and services that you're all proud of. Thank you.